We are talking about the slasher movie Candy Corn. This one is by writer-director Josh Hasty, and it's got a cast of kind of character actors from genre movies. PJ Souls, Tony Todd both have kind of like small supporting roles. Courtney Gaines, I suppose, is our kind of lead character to a certain degree, and you've also got Pancho Mola here. Obviously a few other people as well, but they're kind of your people you're probably going to recognise. And this one is about a kind of travelling carnival that is set up in small town USA. It's actually kind of like a period piece, kind of set, doesn't say exactly when, but I'm assuming sometime in kind of like maybe the 80s. We'll come on to that again. And there's a kind of group of youths that are going around kind of hazing this particular kind of special needs guy who ends up working at this carnival this particular time and inadvertently kind of it goes too far. And the leader of this carnival, this Dr. Voodoo type guy, so essentially uses kind of dark magic to kind of resurrect him, puts this kind of scary looking mask, and then this now slasher kind of goes out for a revenge, a la, Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers style, against those that have wronged him, and the town sheriff is trying to kind of piece together what has happened all in the meantime. So let's discuss what works first of all with candy corn. Candy corn, in case you're unawares, is an American sweet or candy. I don't think it really exists outside the America, so you may not even know what that is, but that's what it is. Anyway, so like I've said, it has a kind of a retro setting, but interestingly with this one, although it's it's filmed like an 80s style movie, it does it purely with kind of set design and costumes and hair and stuff like that, rather than kind of pop cultures. So because of that, it feels a little bit more almost genuinely kind of a kind of vintage movie, rather than the kind of like the Stranger Things kind of style, and kind of a few other kind of movies that have come out recently where they have this kind of throwback feel. This one, I suppose, because it's a low budget film, it doesn't have, because you can't have the licenses to do certain kind of pop culture references and stuff. It purely relies on set design. I think that's an excellent job, because it does just genuinely feel like a movie that's come straight out of the 80s and stuff, and it doesn't make a big deal about it, but it just happens to be there. So I think it does a pretty good job of becoming more genuinely that kind of feel of a kind of a retro film, rather than maybe the ones that try a little bit harder and kind of really play on that nostalgia. This one, it just comes purely because it's just set there and done it to a good standard without kind of drawing too much attention to it. So that was pretty good. I think the most interesting thing for me with this movie, in regards to kind of story-wise, is the actual carnival sort of folk themselves, because they, to me, are the most interesting factors in this movie. Kind of the charismatic kind of Dr. Death, Dr. Voodoo character is, I think Lester, his name is particular kind of fun. And it's his motivations aren't particularly clear, but you get the idea that he holds, obviously, kind of regular people, so to speak, with some content. But the interesting thing I found, his kind of people, one of which is Tony Todd, almost are kind of somewhat unwilling to go along with it, but do because he's the kind of the leader, and it's just an interesting kind of dynamic that I feel maybe isn't explored to it as degree as it could have been, but it certainly has this kind of, gives it certainly the most interesting kind of story threads. The killer art itself, it looks pretty cool. So he's wearing this kind of scary kind of zombie kind of like mask, which I thought was quite fun. So you can get away with having this kind of rotten face without it really being like, why is his face all kind of rotten and stuff like that? Because he's just kind of wearing a mask. There are also some pretty good kills here. I think the standout one is going to be this guy who gets his kind of spine ripped out Predator style, done through a mix of practical and kind of CGI. The CGI is a little bit noticeable, but I think for a low budget movie you can kind of forgive that, to be fair. I think it's just a little bit of extra CGI blood and stuff like that. But the practical effects look pretty good. And there's an awesome scene later towards the end of the movie with a kind of severed head, which I think looks pretty good. So I quite like the aesthetics. It's a fairly lean running time as well, so the kind of doesn't kind of outstay its kind of welcome too much. What doesn't work for me, so a small little nitpick first of all, the colour of the blood here really bothered me, because it's kind of like bright pink, Now I'm colourblind, so I struggle to sort of identify colour, and this looks out of place to me of someone who is colourblind. So it must, in reality, for most people, it must seem really kind of out of place. The actual story itself is very, very generic. I mean, it's written by the director, and I say written by because it just doesn't seem to have any type of panache in regards to kind of storytelling. I like the kind of the 80s setting, like I've said. I kind of like the way that's handled, but I don't know. The story itself is just kids murder someone and they come back for revenge. That's your story. There's no twist in it. It's really just very, very kind of like basic kind of storytelling. Like I said, the only thing I think really kind of is the more interesting factor is the Carnival folk, but I don't feel that they are. That's more of a B plot, if anything, and it ends up kind of really just becoming a thing that happens rather than a kind of a main sort of story driving device. So there's that. Some of the acting's a little bit kind of wobbly, but I have to say, our main kind of named actors, I think do a good job here. But some of our supporting cast, it's just a little bit wobbly sometimes. But again, low budget movie. I'm not going to pick holes in it too much. The other thing is that struck me as a little weird is that we don't really. There's no one to root for in this movie. The guy, the kind of the special needs guy who gets murdered, we never really see him beforehand. So we don't kind of feel empathy for him as much outside of, these kind of bullies have done obviously a bad thing. But we don't get to know the character so much. We don't kind of like necessarily empathise with his character. And then the people that get killed are the kind of the bullies. There's one girl who doesn't directly get involved, but there's no real kind of anyone to root for in this movie, which I found quite odd. It's just there's no central character outside of the kind of maybe the police captain, but he doesn't really. It's more of an ensemble movie than a kind of you following a particular POV character. But to me, I think you have to have really someone who you can kind of root for, who you want to survive, and whether they do or not is that's up to the film. But I didn't really get that with this film. So overall, I think the thing that struck me about this movie is the kind of the music and stuff is good. Just the way the movie is presented in a visual style, I think is pretty interesting in regards to its kind of aesthetic. Its 80s aesthetic. I think the practical effects are pretty good. I think the kind of some story elements, certainly with that involve the Carnival folk, Carny folk, kind of reminded me like the American Horror Story series and stuff like that. But not quite enough is done with it. I didn't think. Tony Todd's cameo is more or less pointless. I have to be honest with you. It's just they've had him on set for a day just to get his name on the kind of the poster, but it's the actual bulk of the story is relatively kind of mundane. So it doesn't really do anything new. I actually find it takes a while to kind of get going to a certain degree as well. So overall, I'm going to give this one just a kind of a middle of the road score. It's okay. Certainly a watchable film. I don't think it's necessarily bad in any kind of like particular kind of way, but it doesn't really going to strike out to become any type of memorable. So for me, this one is a 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.